Testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. This is the part of the tape where we waste a little time so that you can make sure the sound is on and that it is on just right. Not too low or you won't hear me, and not too high, so that the neighbors on the next block won't hear all the wonderful things we're going to do here. Whew. You see, we want everybody to be happy, and that is why we give you a little time to make yourself comfortable. Just stretch a little maybe. Get yourself a little eats. While you're at it, would you mind getting me a liverwurst on rye with plenty mustard on the side? Thank you very much. What's all this noise about it? I didn't order music. I ordered liverwurst on rye. But maybe it's good because now that we begin, I can talk directly to you and to you and you. Oh, yes. Now I can officially say, hello, boys and girls, mummies and puppies, uncles and aunties, nieces and nephews, hippopotamuses and hippopotamuses, dogs, cats, goldfish, and all my fine feathered friends, whatever you are. Hello there. Now, just in case you are wondering who I am, well, I am Professor Ludwig van Dyke. How do you do? How do you do? What's good for me is good for you, like carrots and beans and all sort of greens, kale and spinach. Wait, I'm not finished. That's pretty good. They are good for me and they're good for you. And I wash my hands before each meal and drink my milk. How good I feel. Good hours I keep with plenty of sleep. What's good for me is good for you, and you, and you, and you, too. Or is it 3? No, I guess it's 2. All right, now that we have been properly introduced, and we all know who we are and where we are, let me tell you why we are here. Me especially. I am here to tell you stories. Stories like you never heard before. And I am going to sing a little, and I'm going to maybe dance a little step or two. I do the twist or the mambi or the bossa nova. Anyway, I bet that you never knew that Professor Ludwig van Dyke was in Showbiz. Ooh, what a showman I am. Show off is more like it, I imagine. I don't know. All right, maestro. With a 1 and a 2 and the old soft shoe. Ho-ho! Ooh, that brings back memories. Yes, I remember when I was on the stage. People threw apples, tomatoes, oranges, peaches, grapefruit. And sometimes they even threw the old soft shoe. That's what they did. Oh, how they appreciated my great talents. Oh, it was such fun. Well, anyway, on to the story that I promised you. But before we begin, I want to try an important experiment, all right? Is everyone ready? All right, we take a deep breath. Oh, come on, you. Take a deep breath. What are you scared of? That's better. All right, now pull in your tummy. You, fatty, pull it in. All right, now hold it. Hold your tummy in like that. Hurts, doesn't it? All right, you can go ahead and breathe now. My engineers just told me that you can breathe because the whole world just shrunk. Now, speaking about the world shrinking, isn't it wonderful the way our astronauts circles the Earth in no time at all? Well, if they sneeze over the West Coast, they are over the East Coast before you can even say Gesundheit. You know, talking about speed, I think I better get on with the stories before we run out of tape here. I bet you didn't know that the professor was a beautiful storyteller. That's right. I tell stories like you wouldn't believe it. I don't even believe it. But the one last thing before I begin, I want everyone to try something. Everybody laugh. You know why I wanted you to laugh? Because now I'm going to tell you a very sad fairy tale. Well, it's not a sad fairy tale, I don't think. But the sign on the book here says, grim fairy tale, so I assume that it's sad, wouldn't you? No, that isn't it at all. Actually, Mr. Grimm is the man who wrote many of the stories that you know, like, for instance, Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Snow White, and many, many others. The ones I am going to tell you about are a little different because they was handed down to me by a long, long line of different storytellers. Now, the first story is about Little Wet Riding Hood. That's right, Wet Riding Hood. You see, she lived in a rainforest where it was always raining cats with dogs. Now, isn't that silly? Who ever heard of it raining cats and dogs? Everybody knows it rains cats and wolves. At least it did where Little Wet Riding Hood lived. One day when she was walking through this drippy forest, splash, whoops. No wonder Riding Hood was so wet. Didn't her mommy ever told her not to walk in puddles? Poor Riding Hood was drowning, and she yelled, "Help, help, please, someone save me." Suddenly there was a great big splash right next to her, and a voice said, "Fear no more, little girl. I will save you, because you see this badge here? I is a junior lifeguard." Actually, he wasn't a junior lifeguard at all. That was a fake badge. Actually, he was a wolf in disguise. And when he pulled her out of the water, she thanked him with gratitude. And the wolf whispered to her. He said, "Hello, little girl. I'm Johnny Wolf. Tell me, what are you doing out here all alone, kid?" Well, Wet Riding Hood told him that she was taking a basket of food to her sick grandmother. She asked him if he would like to eat some. Well, when the wolf smelled the pickle juice that had spilled in the food basket, she was taking a bottle of pickles over to the grandmama, he smacked his lips from the smell of the pickle juice and said, "By Jove!" That's the first wolf I ever saw that wore a monocle. He said, "By Jove, this is for me," is what he said under his breath. But just then he heard someone was approaching, and he decided to wait for Wet Riding Hood at her grandmother's house. And with the speed of a wolf, he ran through the woods and into the house without even knocking. And he took grandmother by surprise and locked her up in the closet, put on a nightgown, and watched television. No, what am I saying? He didn't watch television. He put on her nightgown because he wanted to look like her, and then he climbed into her bed. Now, meanwhile, Little Wet Riding Hood was approaching her grandmother's house unawares. She knocked on the door, and there was no answer. She looked in the living room, and there was no one there. She looked in her grandmother's bed, and aha! Ho, ho, ho! There was someone there. And we know who it was, don't we? But we're not telling yet. Grandmother was there with her cap pulled over her face, and she looked a little weird, if not strange. "Oh, grandmother," Little Wet Riding Hood said, "what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, mine child," was Grandma's reply. "Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you has," Wet Riding Hood said. "The better to see you with, my dear." "Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you got it." And grandmother replied, "The better with which to drink up the pickle juice." Now, scarcely had the wolf dressed up like Grandma said this, then with one bound he was out of bed and knocked Wet Riding Hood to the floor. When she screamed, and she was heard by a huntsman who was just happening to pass by. Now, luckily for Wet Riding Hood, he ran into the house and he knocked the wolf into unconscious. Little Wet Riding Hood cried for her grandmother. And with that, from the closet there came the thumping noise. And sure enough, when they opened it, they found a mouse. No, what am I saying? They didn't find a mouse. They found grandmother was in there. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother was in there about to faint. Not having any smelling salts available, and there wasn't a drugstore on the corner or anything like that, Little Red Riding Hood used the pickle juice to revive her grandmother. Well, I want to tell you, if you don't know anything about pickle juice, one whiff of pickle juice would bring anyone to their feet again. And especially grandmother who had a fondness for pickle juice. Well, she not only whiffed it, but she drank it down before you could say piccalilli. And she was on her feet again. They were all so happy about this that they celebrated over a great big jug of pickle juice that Grandma kept on the side for just such an occasion. Then, when they were through, the huntsman who had been passing by and came in and cracked the wolf on the head, you remember, saved him. Well, he took the wolf away, while Little Red Riding Hood went splashing gaily home through the rainy forest. Whew. And I want to tell you, I am glad that it's over, because between the splashing puddles and the pickle juice, this can get to be pretty messy. Besides, I have to let you in on something. This is between you and me. Don't tell anybody. I can't stand pickle juice. Besides, I will tell you, the professor makes a much better drink. I call it Professor Ludwig van Drake's Weepy Cola. First, you squeeze the juice from an onion. One day I'm going to finish my experiments with this new drink of mine. But I keep flooding my workroom with tears. Anyway, in the meantime, did I ever told you about the time when I was on the wild animal half-fairy? Ha ha ha! You see, I didn't pay full price on the safari, and that's why we called it a half-fairy. That's terrible. Anyway, one day I was sitting in the jungle taking a little snooze for myself, and suddenly I heard myself snoring. And this is strange because people doesn't hear themselves snoring. So I knew it had to be something else, and it was. It was a lion, a ferocious lion roaring. I said, it was a lion, a big ferocious lion was roaring. Meow, meow, meow. That's better. When I call for a lion, I want a lion, and I'm not lying about that. Boy, well, to continue. There were lions to the right of me, tigers to the left of me, leopards in front of me, and crocodiles in back of me. And I was surrounded by wild animals. I was in the middle of the local zoo. That's where I was. But did I budge? Did I run in the face of imminent danger and dreadful peril? After all, they could have eaten me for supper. No, sir, not me, not Professor Ludwig van Drake. I didn't run, I stayed right there. What else could I do? Some dunderhead had put chewing gum on my chair and I couldn't get up. Well, on to bigger and taller tales, like Jack and the cornstalk. Now, I know everyone thinks it's Jack and the beanstalk, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret if you promise not to tell anyone. You promise? Raise your right hand, say, I promise. All right. Now, once there was a poor little boy named Jack who lived in a tiny house with his mother, and all they owned was a cow. Now, one day, seeing that there was nothing left to eat, Jack's mother told him to take the cow to the marketplace and sell it. Oh, poor Jack, you don't know how terrible it was for him. He loved that cow, but he knew that there was no grass for her to eat, and he knew that it was a terrible situation for that cow. So he hoped that when he went to the marketplace that some good person would buy her and would treat her nice. Well, on the way to the market, little Jack was stopped by an old man. The man offered him a bag of beans in trade for the cow. Well, Jack is not going to just sell his cow for such a little thing like a bag of beans. No, sir, Jack knew his cow was worth more than a bag of beans, but he did think maybe if the man offered him a nice watermelon, A watermelon has plenty of seeds, he thought, and who knows, someday he might have a whole field of luscious watermelons. Well, Jack's mouth watered. Slop, slop. That's the watering mouth sound. Like that, I think it's. Anyway, what would his mother say if he traded a cow for a watermelon? What would your mother say if you traded your cow for a watermelon? Well, just then, the man interrupted Jack's thoughts, and he said, "Little boy, I got just the thing for you," he said. "I got a big bushel of corn." And when he got home and his mother saw Jack carrying the bag of corn, well, naturally, she was very angry, and beside that, she was annoyed. She said, "I sent you to the market to sell the cow, and look what you brought back." Of course, now we know it could have been worse. Jack could have brought back a bag of beans or a watermelon instead of a bushel of corn. Anyway, that night they had some of the corn. And then soon after they ate supper, Jack put the rest of the corn in the backyard. And after having such a busy day, he went to bed and to sleep. In the morning, when they woke up, Jack's mother discovered that the corn was missing. And this was the very last bit of food that she had, and she was very upset about this. But remember, boys and girls, if you feel very blue about this, behind every cloud, the sun is shining. Well, anyway, the sun was certainly shining on Jack's backyard that day, because right there in the middle, a cornstalk was growing, and growing, and growing. Right before Jack's very eyes, it stretched way up into the sky. Well, naturally, Jack was very excited at seeing this. But not his mother. She wasn't. She says, "Oh, who cares about a silly old cornstalk?" "But Jack," she cried, "where are you going? You come back here this instant." Well, finally Jack reached the top. And lo and behold, he saw a gleaming white castle in the sky. Timidly, he knocked on the door and asked, "Anybody home?" A giant voice rumbled out, "Jack, be nimble, Jack, be quick. Jack, leave my castle before I take you apart and see what makes you tick." Well, now Jack wanted to see what a giant looked like. So he waited until night came, and then he quietly slipped into the castle. And what a sight he saw! The giant was stretched out on the floor asleep. And right next to him was a white hen who was laying shiny golden eggs. Just at that moment, a mysterious voice whispered and told Jack, "Pick up the hen and run for your life." Now, no sooner had he done this than the giant woke up with a roar. Say, Mr. Sound Engineer, I said the giant woke up with a roar. Would you give me a roar, please? Not you personally. I meant from the sound effect. Meow, meow, meow. Oh, that's better. Thank you very much. Anyway, Jack started running as fast as his short, fat little legs could carry him. That giant was right in back of him with his big, long, fat legs. Up and down the castle steps they ran. And just as Jack was in danger of being captured, he grabbed part of the cornstalk, and the next thing...
Soaring high through the air with the greatest of ease, a daring young man on the flying trapeze.
He flew through the air with the greatest of ease. And he reached the ground safely. Well now, even though he didn't get the golden hen, Jack and his mother lived happily ever after, because in all of the excitement, a few golden eggs dropped into Jack's backyard. And you know what else? That is how Jack began his career in the circus as the daring young man on the flying trapeze. Those high places sure makes me dizzy. I bet you didn't know that the professor was once in the circus. Well, I was. Ladies and gentlemen, announcing the world's greatest, most spectacular act. Well, that wasn't me, but I was responsible for the most hazardous, the most spectacularly dangerous thing in the whole tent. I was the one that blew up all those nice colored balloons, the yellow and purple and the orange and the polka dot. You know, you really have to watch those balloons because they can really take off if you don't watch them. Once I put the wrong kind of gas in them, and who do you think goes up holding onto the balloons? Take a wild guess. Why, me. That's who. You know, hey, diddle, diddle, the cat and the fiddle, the cow jumped over the moon. Well, there was no cow. I will let you in on the inside. That was Professor Ludwig van Dijk, what jumped over with the cat and the fiddle. I took an orchestra with me at the time. I don't know why, but I like musical accompaniment whenever I do anything. You know something? I feel a Professor Ludwig van Dijk nursery rhyme coming on. Would you like to hear it? You're going to, so say you're going to like to hear it. That's nice. All right. You know, these things happen to me from time to time. Like some people get hiccups, others get tummy aches. I get nursery rhymes running to my head barefoot most of the time. And sometimes they get mixed up with all the other running around they do. For example, they get a little twisted, like this. Little Jack Horner sat in a corner eating his Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out 24 blackbirds baked inside the pie. And when the pie was open, the birds began to sing. There was a quartet. There was 4 birds. And the bass bird, I happen to know, had a wonderful big voice like this. And he sang the next part that went like this. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down. No suspenders. What am I saying? And Jill came tumbling after. That's what we sing. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty and Jack and Jill and the beanstalk together again. Let's face it, if they did put them together again, that would have been a mess like you never saw before. So I think we're better off this way anyhow. All right. Well, I can do anything and everything when the occasion demands. You know that? But I do know that we won't be telling any more stories until someone turns over this tape. In the meantime, I think I'll take a rest, and I'm going to listen to some of my favorite music. Why don't you listen too?
Through the air with the greatest of ease, a daring young man on the flying trapeze.
Oh, he flies through the air with the greatest of ease, the swinging young kid on the flying trapeze. Ooh. Now, for all of you who came in late, that music was on side 1. We are now on side 2, aren't we? You have put me on side 2, haven't you? Otherwise, I'd be upside down and I would be talking something like this. Is das nur Steinbruch auf nur allen ist die Lacknick, op nick, allen, yes, rock, or something like that. But you do have me standing on my own 2 feet, don't you? Or is it 10 feet? No, that's my octopus buddy that has that. I gotta get him new shoes. Because if you don't have me standing on my feet, the music's gonna go around and come out upside down. All right. Everything is okay, we will assume. Now let me say I am glad to be back with you again, and I hope you are ready to hear more of this special Professor Ludwig van Dijk stories. And I also hope that you have washed behind your ears like your mommy and daddy told you. Otherwise, how do you expect to hear anything? Because if you don't wash behind your ears and brush your teeth, you are going to be in trouble. You gotta brush your teeth. Now you might be wondering what brushing your teeth has to do with all this. But when I ask you to whistle, and you have chewing gum and caramel and licorice on your teeth, how is you going to whistle? You could get all stuck together or something. Now we're going to whistle. We're going to whistle together. Are you ready? All right. With a 9 and a 10 and a big fat hen. All right. Okay. Now here we're going to go. We're going to whistle together. All right. You ready? 1, 2, 3. It's whistle along with Van Drake. What's the matter? You lost your pucker? Why isn't everybody whistling? There's no whistlers here? All right, if you don't know how to whistle, I'm going to give you a lesson. Because I am the world's greatest whistler. All you have to do is roll your lips and go, whew. Now, isn't that easy? Nothing to it. Now, in the place of the whew, you got to put a whistle next time. Now you're going to whistle the tune with me like this. That's a whistle. All right. All right, everybody pucker. This is it. How do you whistle? How do you whistle? This is what you do. Let me hear it louder. Oh, come on, much louder. Whew. Well, now that we all whistled out, why don't we talk about something different? Something like magic, all right? The mere mention of the word sends chills up and down my spine. Have you tried any magic lately? Well, how about joining me? I feel like I'm coming apart anyway. All right, magic. Abracadabra, alakazam, it's the great Ludwig van Drake that I am. Boy, oh boy, what a great magician. Ludwig the Great, Ludwig the Magnificent, Houdini van Drake, slay of hand. And I'm not bad on ice skates either, let me tell you. That was a joke. Sleigh, ice skates. Do you get it? Somebody's going to get it. All right. But did you know that in one of my famous world-renowned acts I used to do before kings and queens and jacks and the 10 of spades? All right, who's got the ace? Oh, Ludwig, you are a card, aren't you? The joker. Well, yes, I am. And the reason for that is because I used to pull cards out of my sleeves, for my ears, my mouth. You've never seen so many cards as I used to pull out of nowhere. Anyway, here is one of the greatest feats of mind over matter that you have ever seen. Now, let's make no mistake, I am a magician. Magician Ludwig van Drake. Maestro, some proper hocus-pocus music, please. Stop the music! Stop the music! All right, hold it on, there. Say, hold on there. What are you trying to do? Give me laryngitis or a sore throat or something like that? Now you hear me, now you don't. That's not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be now you see me, then you don't. Okay? You don't work that way. You want to take the spotlight away from poor little Ludwig, what's me, who wouldn't hurt even a fly. Well, I don't gonna do business with you fellas anymore. Henceforth, that means starting absolutely right now, I will make my own music. I work in absolute silence. Because to perform these super-duper mystical feats of mine, that requires absolute concentration. And there will be positively no noise. And understand, no one is to say anything. Mr. Engineer, I didn't mean I wasn't supposed to say anything. I meant everybody else wasn't supposed to say anything. Would you mind turning me back on? The show can't go on without me. Please. Okay. All right. The show cannot go on without me and my engineer. I had to mention him. All right. Now we can go ahead. And I am ready to perform for you my famous disappearing act. Goodbye. Wait a second, not yet. First of all, everyone must close their eyes. This is what you have to do for my disappearing act. Yes, I said everyone close their eyes. What do you mean you don't want to close your eyes? How do you expect me to disappear if you keep your eyes open? Close your eyes. Did I disappear? That's right. All right, we forget about all that. Because if I am not here, then who would tell you the next story about Aladdin and the eeny-weeny genie? Once there was a lad called Aladdin. And he lived in a far-off land where people didn't have all the good things that we have, such as television, automobiles, airplanes, and bubblegum. Actually, they didn't have these things because they wasn't even invented yet. But they did have a lot of magic, like snake charmers. And these were men who was friendly with snakes. And they could make these snakes do all kinds of tricks merely by playing on a magic flute. I'm not going to tell you that you should try this, since you never know which is a friendly or unfriendly snake in the grass. There was also other kinds of magic like you never saw before. There was people who slept on a bed of nails, and others who sawed people in half. So things was pretty interesting in those days, come to think of it. And if you ever got really bored, you could always hitch a ride on a camel. Now, before we go any further, I think you should know what the two humps on the camel's back are for. One is the hot water tap, and the other is the cold water tap. All right, we better continue before someone taps me on the head with a hammer. Now, back to the story of Aladdin. Well, this town where Aladdin lived was a watering station for camel caravans. Now, Aladdin worked after school in one of these camel-filling stations. Each time that a camel caravan would come in, the leader would yell, "Fill her up!" And it was Aladdin's job to give the camel water and whatever else you have to do for a camel, just like in our gas stations today. Except Aladdin didn't have to check the oil and wipe the windshield. Because there was some other fellow worked in the station who did that. But anyway, one hot day, a little old bearded man came by leading a tired-looking camel. Boat had come a long way, and they was very, very thirsty. So Aladdin gave them some water. But when it came time to pay, the little old man had no money. Well, upon hearing this, the wicked wizard, who was also the owner of the watering station, flew into a rage, and he demanded to be paid. Well, the old man only had a battered old ring that he could offer as payment. But this only made the wicked wizard madder, and in his rage he fired poor Aladdin. But seeing this happen, the old man was so sorry, so he went home with Aladdin. And after he explained to Aladdin's mother, he again offered his ring. "Please take it," he said. "It might bring you luck." But Aladdin's mother thought it looked worthless and flung it into a dark corner. Well, after the poor, despondent old man and his camel had left, Aladdin picked up the ring where it had been thrown and began to play with it. And suddenly there was a little puff of smoke and a tiny little genie appeared. "You woke me from a sound sleep," the genie complained. "But since you are such a good boy, I am at your service." Well, Aladdin looked at him in amazement and whispered, "Who are you?" He said, "I am your friendly serviceman." No, that isn't what he said. He said, "I'm at your service because I am the eeny-weeny genie. Now, my powers are small, and I can only do small things for you. I can do nothing big because my powers are only small. I cannot perform large feats of magic. However, if someday you need a truly important wish, go to the abandoned cave, and there you will find a magic lamp, and this will entitle you to 1.5 wishes." Well, time passed and passed and passed. The genie had been very good to Aladdin. The genie helped Aladdin to build a successful business, and it helped Aladdin to find a beautiful princess. Aladdin married this beautiful princess, who one day presented him with a daughter, and they all lived happily until something terrible happened. Returning home from the office one day, Aladdin found that his wife, his daughter, the ring, and the furniture was gone. Well, where would he turn without his ring and its eeny-weeny genie? And then he remembered what the little voice of the genie had told him. If you ever have a big wish, go to the abandoned cave, and there you will find a magic lamp. Sure enough, he went to the cave, and the lamp was there, like the genie had told him. Aladdin rubbed the lamp, and whiff, bang, boom, boom, zoom, kaloom, there was a lot of huffing and puffing and smoking and fuming, and out of all of this appeared a huge big genie. And he was hopping and skipping and jumping because it was pretty hot in that there lamp there for the genie. And the genie coughed, and the genie offered his services. Upon hearing what had happened to poor Aladdin's wife and daughter being missing, he promised to help to get them back. We'll have them back in a jiffy, he said, the genie. But remember, this is your big wish. In fact, with eeny-weeny genie thrown in, it's a wish and a half. And you will have used up all of your big wishes. Remember this, kid. Now, the genie said, follow me outside the cave to my magic carpet. And sure enough, there was a flying carpet, and there was a pad underneath it, which most carpets have, so I guess you'd call it a launching pad. Yeah, that's what it was. All right. Now, the genie said, all right, begin the countdown. Anyway, Aladdin began to count, just like he had learned. 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. All systems are go. Blast off! Well, there was a loud roar, there was a burst of smoke, and in a flash they were up and in orbit. The way these carpet spaceships go, they soon saw the castle where the wicked wizard was holding Aladdin's family. So very, very quietly in the spaceship they descended, because the evil man, this horrible wizard, was asleep. And once they took the magic ring off his finger, he would no longer be able to harm them. And quicker than you can say Aladdin and the eeny-weeny genie, they were off and heading for home. From then on, Aladdin and his wife and his daughter and the eeny-weeny genie lived happily ever after. But this all goes to prove that you should always be content with small wishes and save the big ones for when they are really needed. Well, that magic Aladdin story was really something, wasn't it? With all the flying carpets and the magic lamps, and that genie was pretty turkey, wasn't he? He could do a lot of things, all right, but I bet he couldn't do what I can do. Why, whatever you do and wherever you go, people is always talking about Professor Ludwig von Drake's greatest inventions. And what do they say? He's a nut. It'll never wake. That's what they... What am I saying? No, that isn't what they say. That's what they say, but I don't know why I should tell you that. All right. Where was I? Talking about my famous inventions, which I haven't even invented yet. But I do know that you want to hear about how I made a ballpoint pen with invisible ink. And it worked fine, except some people complained they couldn't see what they were writing. But my biggest masterful invention was something I dreamed up just very recently. An ice cream lollipop. Now, the first thing I did, I got some vanilla ice cream and I poured it into the ice cream churner. Then I got some chocolate and strawberry and fudge and tutti frutti and pistachio ice cream and a whole lot more colors. And one by one, I poured all these delicious flavors into the ice cream churner. I mixed and I churned and I mixed them all up together. And when they were all ready to be put on the stick, I couldn't find a stick long enough. So I had to use this long pole. Now let me tell you, it isn't easy eating ice cream from a 10-foot pole. But the way the flavors drip down. Would someone please put me in the mood for the next story? Please play some nice rockabye baby music. Hey, fellas, what kind of baby you rockin' anyway? That's no sleepy time music. But anyway, now I can tell you a sleepy time story. and it is called Sleeping Beauty. Now, this story, my friends, is about a beautiful young princess named Aurora. Now, you probably know of her, but this story is also about 10 good fairies who I would now like to introduce. And you can count them one by one on your fingers. There was Annabelle and Bluebell, Clarabelle and Dorabelle, Florabelle and Isabel, Norabelle and Rosabelle, and Susybell. Did I leave anyone out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, yeah, 9. Let's see, there's one more. Of course, I almost forgot Mandibel. Now that you know everyone, we can go on with the story. Once upon a time, there was a young princess who lived in a castle. And she was very happy, but wanted to see what was beyond the castle. Alas, alack, and Alaska. One day she disobeyed her parents, and she strayed far, far out into the woods. And soon the little princess was lost. The further she walked, the further from home she wandered. And soon it was dark, and there was no place to go, and there was nothing to eat. Just as she started to cry, there was a jingling of bells. And a chorus of tiny voices sang out, "Don't cry, little princess, because we're going to help you." I don't know if they sang it with that tune, but that's the words they said. And the sobbing little princess looked up and said, "Who are you?" is what she said, I guess. And they all answered together, "Annabelle, Bluebell, Clarabelle," until their leader finally said, "Hush! You can't all talk together. Give your names one by one." And so they did. Each one touched the little princess with a magic wand and said, "Come with us. We will take care of you." And so each one took the princess by a finger and waved their magic wand. And zoom off they all flew to the fairy home. Now, as you know, there is good fairies and there is bad fairies. And lurking in the woods was a bad fairy. She had just cast an evil spell on the princess's home, and now she wanted to steal her away. But the good fairies used their magic to protect the little princess from the bad fairy. For 16 long years they hid her in their forest home. And Princess Aurora had everything a little girl could want. And something extra besides. All of the animals of the forest, they would come and they would play with her, and all the birds would sing to her. No wonder then that she grew into a happy and a beautiful young lady. But alas, one day the bad fairy discovered where she was living and cast a very evil spell. Ooh, what an evil spell that was! Even the good fairies with all their magic power couldn't free the princess from it. And it was Florabelle, or was it Dorabelle, or not Dorabelle, well, no matter. One of them, anyway, got a good idea, and she said, according to legend, a kiss from her true love will wake up Sleeping Beauty and free her from the evil spell. Well, this sounded like a good idea, and they searched all over for an available prince. But every prince who kissed the Sleeping Beauty was unable to awaken her. And just when it all seemed very hopeless, a little caterpillar appeared in the forest. Now, he had been one of the princess's animal friends who used to talk to her and everything. And now he offered to free her from this magic spell. But this called for a conference between all the good fairies because they was anxious to help her. And they agreed to let him try. And you know what happened? When the caterpillar kissed Sleeping Beauty's hand, he changed into a handsome young prince, and she turned into a caterpillar. No, what am I saying? No, that isn't what happened. No. The caterpillar kissed Sleeping Beauty's hand, and he changed into a handsome prince. That's how it goes. And then he kissed her on the cheek, and as if by magic, Sleeping Beauty awoke. And that's right, you guessed it. He, too, had been under the spell of the evil fairy. And now both of them was free. Free to live happily ever afterward. Oh, there was just one more little thing. At the wedding, do you know who was the bridesmaids there? That's right, you guessed it. Annabelle, Bluebell, Clarabelle, and all of the other good fairies. Well, that's the end of the stories, and I want to say it's been very nice being with you. And I hope that you have been with me, and that we've had a lot of fun. But now it is time to say to all my favorite boys and girls, mommies and poppies, uncles and aunties, nieces, nephews, hippopotamuses, dogs, cats, goldfish, and all my fine, feathered friends wherever you are, so long there.